to say, for me as a writer or as a sort of at all any kind of public persona, coming out as an addict was not easy. Actually,
No,
I didn't even kind of let myself look at it too closely. I'm just like, just write the book, publish the book, and you'll talk about it, and it'll emerge. But that's so interesting that, as surfing's getting destigmatized, so is addiction. You see there's that parallel again.
Yeah.
And that's so.
Do you think that has to do with our digital age? I feel like the digital era is making all kinds of weird not weird, but a lot of direct connections where you don't have to funnel it through another kind of, top-down body. Like it's kind of very direct. And so the networks are literally very, like spiderwebby. And so maybe even the truth of how different substances, work on our system, or even surfing as a way, because we live in a way that is not in the same organization as anyone else, right? Where our lives are patterned by weather. We're looking at other things, and we're just trying to fit everything into the way society is organized.
Well, I just think society's become more accepting. Even with drug addiction, as more celebrities and mental health people have been coming out. I mean, you look at Simone Biles and like the acceptance and understanding of this. You don't have to feel that shame as much, because part of the problem with addiction is the shame that you feel, and if you can take that shame out, it might help people with recovery. And same with surfing. Like there used to be a shame with surfing. It used to be Spicoli, and now it's in the Olympics, and you have Carissa Moore. And so it's interesting. Like I have this funny story I wanted to share, because there's this guy, Peter, who I surfed with, an older gentleman. And, he got married years ago, and he was going on his honeymoon with his wife, and they were going to Hawaii, and they get to Hawaii, and then he tells her, "Oh, by the way, I surf." She didn't know he surfed. He hid it from her, and then bought a surfboard, and then she didn't see him the rest of their honeymoon.
Geez, that is terrible.
And then surfing kind of took over. And it's like, imagine, that's a true addiction story.
After
there.
he tied the knot. That's terrible. That's the worst story.
That's funny.
Imagine marrying somebody, you're like, "Oh, by the way, I surf a lot. It's an obsession, actually."
But waiting for that moment, like I've tied the knot. Okay, I'm safe now. Now I can
really let them know who I am.
Yeah. Just held out until then. That is crazy. Funny. Speaking of crazy, I actually know someone who, sorry, I didn't mean crazy, but has mental health issues, but had to quit surfing because of the hold it had on him. He didn't want to be held by something. But, I mean, it's hard because he also is now completely deeply in the internet, conspiracy theories and all that. So there's another addiction that's kind of kicked in, and it almost would have been better, I think, if surfing was the thing.
Well, that's my position on this, is that we're all in bondage to something, and you have to choose your form of bondage wisely. And that's why I don't think of my relationship to surfing as utterly healthy. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't delude myself. I think there's an addictive component to this, and that's all right relatively, because I would rather be staying fit in order to be, I would rather have this form of bondage and addiction and captivity than the kind I know myself subject to, which is truly and unequivocally destructive, right?
Yeah.
And if I don't have a middle ground addiction with my personality, and I'm subject to it, to acquiring a worse one, right? So in a way, I'm blocking out my psyche a bit. I've got certain things that are given expression.
I mean, I think about just on a purely elemental level. Like I think, for example, they say sometimes people smoke because they actually need that oxygen, and they also have that addiction of the nicotine and whatnot. So I feel like there is something about our body that also wants that oxygen. Like we need to breathe. That's why exercise, I think, is can be so beneficial. But then there's that other point where the other things, maybe adrenaline or those other things, become addictive. But there is this elemental base that we actually need. And, I think about like, even in terms of like my own depression, what exercise has done is just like it's pumped the oxygen and into my system, and also the toxins in my blood are being expelled, and which usually contains like how thought, emotion turns into toxins in your body, and so you're able to expel that. So that feels good, that relief. So there's that balance in terms of like you get the good, but you just have to make sure you don't let like the adrenaline junkie kind of kick in. You let that kind of you use that to be productive in life and in society, but you just want to keep that in balance. And another theory that I heard that was really interesting, also purely on an elemental level, the reason why we have this addiction to surfing or the ocean, and you think about like fishermen and like people who live by the ocean who can't get enough and can't leave it. Like there's something about it that has this allure, and we just yearn for it. That we're predominantly water, and because ocean is water, and it's just the elemental thing of water wanting to be with other water, like that thing where you put two drops next to each other and they find a way to touch, they find a way to be one big body. So maybe it's in that primal sense that our body is trying to get back to the primeval
I think chemical
mother.
Maybe then in that way, the way you describe it, water wanting to attract to other water.
Right.
It's definitely, I think, a chemical thing. And you actually talk about it in the therapeutic side of your book, how you bathe in it almost. It surrounds you, it really covers all of you.
Yeah, it immerses you and hugs you, embraces you. And there's certainly in ocean water a kind of neurochemical benefit from the saline for people with cystic fibrosis. There are all these kind of benefits people are finding from ocean water, particularly. But, also the whole notion of just being part of the wilderness. I mean, the vast predominance of our ancestral time was spent in wilderness, right? So anytime you go in the forest or in the mountains or in the ocean, you're feeling a connection to those millennia that preceded the agrarian age. And we have a deep connection and we feel integrated and at home. I guess that's probably the way I think of it. When I'm in the water and when I'm out surfing, I feel at home. I feel at peace, and I feel alert. Though I not feel like I want to go to sleep. I just feel kind of integrated and at home. I feel that way in the woods too. But I feel it more strongly in the ocean. But if I go out into the southern woods where I grew up hunting snakes as a kid in Alabama and so forth, when I go out in those woods and I hear all those insects and I feel at home, I feel good, and I want to be there. That's where I want to be. I don't want to be, on Fifth Avenue. Yeah.
Well, do you think the kind of hunter-gatherer instinct also is part of that appeal, particularly surfing?
Particularly
you
surfing.
are hunting
the wave,
hunting waves. And I always actually say this, like particularly on the East Coast compared to West Coast. I'm always doing this. West Coast is agricultural. East Coast is hunter-gatherer, because we feast and famine too, and we gorge ourselves when there's waves, whereas they can plan around it a bit more. It's a bit more scheduled.
But it's still the same.
But they can predict like thousands of miles away.
Yes, you can see a south coming from
whereas
a long
ours
way.
are much more
but you're still like,
predict.
On the Coconut Wireless, like, how's it at your break? Oh, how's it? Send
but
me
there
a
is
picture.
that they're reading the signs.
Are we going to the right place?
It's the reading of the signs. It's that whole wanting to predict again that it comes back to, and there's that hunter-gatherer aspect to it.
Right, and Surfline is like a kind of shaman of the hunt.
Totally.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But, with regard to like hunting, I really feel that on a hurricane swell here where and I even feel like the kind of pack, like it's like when you are and the arrival of a really exceptionally good hurricane swell coming through, and someone will be yelling like, it's got a corner. It's like we're leaping on the back of this beast, this migratory species that's breaking through the forest. We haven't seen it for a year. Jump on it.
I know.
Grab
it is exactly that.
Hold it. And there's almost like a teamwork. No one wants this particular one to get by. I remember feeling that really strongly. I'm like, this guy wants me to catch this wave.
Yes, there is that, like...
Don't let it go.
Exactly.
Get it. And there's that sense of, like, don't let that one
I
get
will
by.
shout at people, If there's a set, go, motherfucker, paddle now, paddle, you know, and yeah. Or if they don't, then you're like,
what a
back
waste.
of the line.
Yeah. Right.
Shame. You brought shame on your tribe.
Exactly. That's what you start to feel the older you get. You can blow it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I could take off sideways on this late.
Yeah.
I've been doing it all my life. Oops. Oh shit, I'm getting lip launched. And the locals are going, bro, you just blew that set wave. I don't want to see you around.
Yeah.
You're like,
That's your last
I'm
wave.
61. You talk to me when you're surfing at 61, you punk. I'm riding the shortboard at 61.
Oh, God.
Whatever.
So I got to ask, you've also taken up the hobby of jujitsu.
Yeah, I had to
That's
kind
such
of
a
back
common
off.
combination, I feel.
I had to
with
back
surfing.
off. I looked like I was going to get a heart attack. I came back, my wife's like, you look like you're about to die. And because the workout you go with jiu-jitsu, it engages those primal things.
Yeah.
It's like, am I going to get killed here?
Yeah.
And you
Am I going to break an
bring
arm?
so much more energy to it. But these guys were not wearing masks.
Oh, geez.
Oh,
I was
boy.
like face to face. I'm having sex with like 7 different guys. They all listen to Joe Rogan. They're anti-vax. And I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, no.
And my son wanted to do it. We were he'd been doing it for years. Actually, I knew about it because of him, and I hooked him up with a really great local jiu-jitsu studio, and where they're both black belts as a couple, north south, and. I was just like, okay, I'm doing this. And then COVID hit, and I couldn't do it. And now I still can't do it. But having done it a few times, I'm like, you're going to die of a heart attack if you do this. You're going to straight up die of a heart attack. It is so, I work out every day, right?
Yeah.
I'm fit, but I'm not like that fit. It's great. Have you done it?
I prefer... I did Aikido instead. I prefer that instead. Because jiu-jitsu just seems so intense, and the type of person sometimes I feel like it attracts is quite intimidating for me, and that's not me. Like, I'm a really sweet, nice guy. Like, I don't want to.
Your size, you can afford to be. You're just like, dude, I'm a nice guy.
Yeah,
What about you?
exactly.
Have you done jiu-jitsu?
I've done all kinds of other martial arts. Like I trained Muay Thai pretty intensely
Muay
for
Thai.
some
Oh my
time.
gosh, I didn't know that.
A touch of Kung Fu and a touch of I think Aikido as well, but Muay Thai was the one that I really, I like talk about adrenaline junkie, like I've run marathons. I played lacrosse in college and things like that. So I am very familiar to this. But, going back to the idea of addiction and this idea of connecting to something bigger. I'm thinking about all these things you guys are talking about as far as even at this age, wanting to kind of push your limits and also stretch your body in ways that we are now, as you get older, your range of motion is basically you walk like this, you sit, you stand, you lay down. That's basically it. And the beauty of surfing for me is the tumble, even the tumble, getting thrown off. You're underwater and you're a giant octopus, right? You're just like, and you're embodying shapes that you're not embodying on land. And so even jiu-jitsu and all these other things. And I feel like this also trying to connect back to nature, being in the wild. There's such a diversity of things that happen when you're in the wild. All the sensations, all the biodiversity. Like there's so many things that we're not maybe even catching on a sensory level that conscious level, but they're there. And I think about like the idea of also addiction. There is this sense where you're yearning to connect to something bigger, to an expansion, of freedom. And I feel like that there is this really interesting parallel of, that we're just ultimately just trying to connect to the source, to the mother lode, and it goes astray.
Tap in the source, which has dual meaning for surfing and doing drugs as well.
Yeah, you have to feel compassion for addicts. Ultimately, compassion for people it's a seeking.
Yeah.
And I think that you see that with the liminality of addicts in the city, like on 5th Avenue or 7th Avenue, is where I come out of the Penn Station, and the opioid addicts are on their flattened cardboard, and like they were, it's like a mendicant beggar thing. It looks and feels like a sacred space of seeking. They're going to die. We're all going to die. They tried something that didn't work out, and now they're stuck. and there's no safety net for them. They've fallen. This is where you wind up when you fall, all the way down. And it's like the Middle Ages, you know?
Yeah.
It's full on like the Middle Ages. And
It's sad.
homelessness is like that, and we don't take care of our people in that way, and we see it, and yet